Welcome to Lasea class. I am your teacher, Jan Lasea. Today, let us learn radio frequency identification scanner or reader used as innovative input device for software development. Computer programmers create codes, algorithms, and use libraries, frameworks, and open sources to achieve a quality homemade software. Computer programmers think outside the box and be creative in the software development. One such creativity is by using innovative I/O devices besides the keyboard, mouse, gamepad, monitor screen, and printer in order to have ease of use, convenience, and intuitive interaction between the user and the personal computer. Here are some innovative devices for your software project if it is needed. The serial temperature scanner measures the body temperature of a person. It is widely used during the COVID-19 pandemic. The radio frequency ID scanner determines the identification number of the radio frequency ID tag embedded in a plastic card or a keychain tag. The bar or quick response or QR codes scanner interprets the information from a two-dimensional barcode and quick response or QR code. The fingerprint sensor recognizes human fingerprints. The materials needed to utilize the radio frequency identification scanner or reader into our software project are radio frequency identification scanner or reader. Radio frequency identification scanner or reader, and it comes with a USB cable that you can connect the radio frequency identification scanner or reader to a desktop or laptop personal computer. The benefits of using the radio frequency ID scanner or reader for input device are: it is very fast, it is accurate and convenient. Suppose you are a cashier in a grocery store. Each product has 10 digits identification. There are 10 customers lined up to pay to the cashier. Each customer has 10 products to buy. You will be slow to encode manually the 10 digits identification data per product, and also you will be prone to mistakes in typing or typographical error. The queue of the customers will be slow to move forward and be serviced by the cashier. Next, we need to have a Visual Studio C# IDE. Lastly, a Windows desktop or laptop personal computer. Types of radio frequency identification scanner or reader. I bought two types of radio frequency identification scanner or reader from an online e-commerce website. The link is provided below under the description. The first type is the 13.56 MHz USB radio frequency ID card reader. It has a reading distance up to 10 centimeters or equivalent to 3.93 inches. Its frequency is 13.56 MHz, and it supports the following radio frequency ID cards such as MEFARI 1S50, MEFARI 1S70, MEFARI Ultralight, MEFARI Pro, and MEFARI Disfire. The second type is the 125 kHz USB radio frequency ID card reader. It has a reading distance up to 8 centimeters or equivalent to 3.14 inches. It has a frequency of 125 kHz, which is a slower frequency, and it supports the following radio frequency cards such as EM4001 and 4100. I recommend that you buy the 13.56 MHz USB radio frequency ID card reader because it can scan or read as well the 125 kHz radio frequency cards beside this 13.56 MHz radio frequency card and keychain tag. Let us take a look inside a radio frequency ID keychain tag and radio frequency ID card. This passive radio frequency ID tags or tag contains a tiny chip, and this tiny chip or microchip contains the stored identification data. The tiny chip transmits the identification data with the help of the coil antenna to the radio frequency ID scanner or reader. When you open up this radio frequency ID keychain tag, you can see a microchip together with a coil antenna. When you open up the radio frequency ID card, it contains a microchip where the identification data is stored, and as well as a coil antenna. These are some applications of the radio frequency identification scanner or reader. Number 1, point of sales in a grocery or department store. Number 2, supply chain management. 3, tracking systems. 4, employee identification. 5, secure building system. 6, automatic attendance system. And any other applications that you can think of, and your imagination is the limit. I made a Windows application using the C# programming language to receive the scan identification data from the radio frequency identification scanner or reader. The codes are lengthy, and I selected this code shown that will process the received identification data from the radio frequency identification scanner or reader. The graphical user interface text box will receive the scan identification data. I place a key up event handler to the text box. The radio frequency ID scanner or reader appends a new line character or the equivalent of a enter key character at the end of the identification data. Inside the key up event handler method, the if condition will evaluate if there is a enter key character detected from the identification data. If the condition is true, then that means that the radio frequency identification scanner or reader sent an identification data to the text box. It will search the identification data to the array of string variable. This variable registered ID containing 2 examples of 10 digits identification data. If it is found, then it will show a feedback that ID number recognized. You may proceed. Otherwise, if it is not found, Then it will show a feedback that unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. In this example, the array of string registered ID contains two registered identification data. But in the real world, it can be many and are stored in a database using MariaDB database engine or the Microsoft SQL Server database engine. To hide and protect the scan identification data, I set the property password char of the text box to a character value asterisk so that it will hide the scan identification data sent by the radio frequency identification scanner or reader. Ladies and gentlemen, let us run and test. As you can see, I bought two radio frequency ID scanner or reader. This is the 125 kilohertz radio frequency identification scanner or reader. Whereas this is the 13.56 megahertz radio frequency ID identification scanner or reader. We cannot tell which one is which, but I bought in the past a 13.56 megahertz radio frequency identification module that we can connect to a Arduino Uno microcontroller. And it comes with this radio frequency ID plastic card together with a keychain tag. And that's what I can determine, what I can be able to know which one is the 13.56 megahertz and which one is the 125 kilohertz radio frequency identification card. Because of this 13.56 megahertz radio frequency ID module that I bought, that comes with a plastic card, RFID card, and a keychain tag. Let us test if the 13.56 megahertz radio frequency identification scanner or reader send the identification data. This is my current instructor ID at the Benguet State University that contains a RFID tag embedded. This is my old instructor ID at Benguet State University that also it has a RFID tag embedded. And we will also test this plastic card that has a RFID tag embedded together with the keychain tag that has a RFID tag embedded. If I scan this, we can see that the notepad received the identification data scan, and it contains a 10 digits identification data. Next. Next. And then finally, the keychain or the keychain tag. Next, let us run the C# Windows application that simulates a employee login entry with text-to-speech.
ID number recognized. You may proceed. ID number recognized. You may proceed. ID number recognized. You may proceed. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. ID number recognized. You may proceed. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. ID number recognized. You may proceed. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. ID number recognized. You may proceed. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. ID number recognized. You may proceed. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. ID number recognized. You may proceed. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. 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 ID number recognized. You may proceed.
This 125 kHz radio frequency identification scanner or reader cannot detect these four RFID ID cards and keychain. It cannot be able to detect this. Let us try it. This is the 125 kHz radio frequency identification scanner or reader. Let us test if it can scan and recognize. It cannot. The other one, it cannot as well. So that is the limitation of the 125 kHz radio frequency identification scanner or reader. Let us put back the 13.56 megahertz radio frequency identification scanner or reader.
ID number recognized. You may proceed. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited. ID number recognized. You may proceed. Unrecognized ID number. Entry is prohibited.
That ends our topic for today. I hope you are inspired in my class. Thank you for watching. God bless us.